So the flooring has now dried into place, and I've got a little bit of lifting along the front, just in some areas. If you've got too much lifting, you can feed a little bit of glue under there and then use clamps to hold it down. But what I'm actually going to do with mine is apply a bit of wood filler along the crack, and then once that's completely dry we can paint along this front once we've done all the skirting and coving and everything, and we can paint the edges of all of that as well at the same time. And then I've got a little bit of lifting over in that back corner, and I'm not sure, maybe I didn't get the glue right into that corner, but what I can do with that is actually stick that down using the skirting board. So I'll push the skirting board down as far as it will go, and that will hold all that into place then. But overall I'm really pleased with how that's looking. I really like the colour scheme now, and we can really brighten that up with the furniture. I'll get some lovely blues and greens and things in there. So it's now lunchtime, and then when we come back from lunch, camera's decided to, when we come back from lunch we can make a start on these door surrounds. So for the internal door frame, measure the thickness of your walls, and mine are 6mm or 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to be using 6 by 3mm strip. So first of all, take a measurement for the height of your door opening, and then cut your pieces accordingly. And they don't have to go right to the top, because all of this is then going to be covered by a frame that we're going to be sticking to the wall on either side. So put those pieces into place. And I've got a little bit of a rounded corner there, so this one's a little bit tighter, but again that's okay because all this outside edge will be covered. And then bring in your small rule, and you want to get a measurement between those two. So turn your rule so that you can actually place it against one and see the measurement at the other end there, and mine is 60. And take a measurement at the top and bottom, and I found that I think it was my top was just 1/2 millimetre wider than the bottom, and again that's down to how the kit has been cut out. So obviously there was a bit of an error in cutting out the door and keeping it square. So do take both of those measurements, and then you can get a more exact fit, and then cut pieces like that. So that must be the bottom bit. And I've gone for the 6 by 3 strip at the bottom. Downstairs there's not such a big height difference. Here there's a little bit of a lip, but I thought it might then be a nice idea. We could maybe put a little sign at the side saying mind the step or something like that. And then cut your piece for at the top as well. And this one was a little bit tighter. I push that up there. See, I've got a nice fit, even though I've got a little bit of gapping at those edges. So make sure you've got a nice tight door frame that will hold itself in like that. And don't worry about any of these little corner gaps. You might have a lovely square door, but because mine rounds over, that's why I've got those gaps. And then we'll be covering that with the door frame. Now originally I said about using a 1.5mm sheet for the frame and cutting strips, but what I think I'm actually going to do, just because I've got so much of it, is use that skirting board that I showed you earlier. And even looking at the surround here in my craft room, see how that's shaped? It's got quite a nice shape to it. So it's thicker on the outside edge here, and then it slants inwards towards the actual door opening. And this skirting board that I've got here is very similar. So I'm going to use that for my door surround. So you can either use just sheet wood and cut it into strips, and these are, how high are they? 12mm high then, or 1/2 an inch. So you could cut strips to that thickness, or if you've got some skirting board similar to this, then you could use that. And as we're not having a door, I think having a more sort of detail on the frame or on the surround will look quite nice. So I'm now going to cut these and we're going to be doing mitre joins in the ends of the side pieces. So again, take a measurement from your door opening. Sorry, I'm spinning you around a lot again, aren't I? So for the external door surround, you want to take the measurement from the floor and then just to the bottom of this top strip. And mine is, my rule only goes to 150, but I make that 153 millimeters. And then I've already cut my first piece. So if I show you how that's to be placed, so that will sit there, and the pencil line that you've made for the height sits just below that top piece there. And then we'll also have another piece there, and then we'll cut the top piece with a mitre at each end that will sit along there and completely cover this top strip. Move you up a little bit there so you can see what I mean. So take your measurement from the ground to the underside of this top strip, and then I'll show you how to cut that with a mitre. So that's my right hand door surround. So on my left hand one, again I want the narrower edge facing towards the opening, so I want the mitre going in the opposite direction. So on the other one it will go out and the highest part will be on the left hand side. So what I'm actually going to do is take a new strip, and then I can use that for the other side of the door. It just makes it easier. I find angles quite difficult, so this will make it easier to get my head around it. So to make the measurement then onto your piece of wood, so it needs to go that way, and my mitre will need to go that way. And it's a good idea to do sort of little pencil marks on them so you know where you're going. So your measurement, so in my case 154 millimeters, do the little line on the narrow edge or the inside edge of your piece. And if you're just using strip wood, then that makes it even easier because you just do it on either side like that. And then place that in your mitre block. Again, I'll just do my little line there like that so I know which way I'm cutting. And then you want to cut so that the blade of your knife is just below the little pencil mark that you've just made for your measurement. So I just need to move it down a little tiny bit like that. And then saw nice and slowly. And I like to keep the blade so it's touching the edge of the cutout section on the block. So cut through like that. And I've got my two pieces, and I'm just going to go and check that. Yep, that fits nicely along there. Pencil line is right along the top of the door opening, and I'm just going to trim those bits off there with my knife, so don't actually cut in to your mitre cut, but just trim alongside it if you've got any little frayed bits of wood like that. So that's my two outside panels. I'm going to put them both into place now. Like that. So the inside edge of them will be flush with the inside edge of that first surround there. Just bring that over like that. Make sure it's flush. Oops. Make sure it's flush at the top as well so that you're getting an exact measurement. That one as well. I'm going to have to sort of do a contortionist act to get my rule. Oh no, it's down here. And then you want to take a measurement between the two pieces. So really it'll be the same width as that top piece there. So 60 millimeters, and that's the width on the inside of the mitres. So again, I'll show you how to measure that out. So again, remember that your thinner edge of your moulding is going to be facing downwards like that. So I'm going to begin by cutting a mitre at that end, which will come out to the right like that. Like that. And then you want to measure along the straight edge, so from the corner of that mitre. I'm just going to trim those little frayed bits off. and then your 60mm, or the width of your door opening, will come right from that little corner, and then you'll make your little pencil mark there like that, and that's where your second mitre will start and come across like that. I place those two side pieces back there like that, again getting them nice and lined up, and then the top piece should just slot into place. That's quite a nice fit, that one. So you want to follow that process then for each side of each door. So do another one, I'll do another one for here now, using those same measurements, and then I'll re-measure for the bottom door. But I think that's going to look really nice. I'm glad I thought about using that skirting board. That's got a lot extra detail in it. Okay, so I'll now get on with the other ones. All of my pieces are now cut for the 4 door surrounds, and I've just written on the back to identify them 1EH for first floor entrance hall, ground entrance hall, and then first floor shop and ground floor shop, so that I know where they all go back. And I want to get them painted and fitted before we then cut the skirting board, because obviously we'll need to measure around these, and also it saves having lots of bits on your desk all at once. So I've stuck some tape here, sticky side up, to a piece of painting card, and I'm just going to stick them into place. You only need to paint the front and also along the side of each piece, which will be visible. There as well, they're all written on, so it doesn't matter now if you muddle them all up. And as I said before, I'm going to be doing these in the white paint that I'm using for the stairs and all of the other fittings. Like that. So I've done a couple of coats on each of those pieces now, so I'm going to leave those to dry. And I just realised that I left the internal door surround parts in place, and I should have given those a coat of paint at the same time, but I've attached them to another sheet, and again I've written on the back G or 1 for ground floor or first floor, so I remember where they go back. So I'll now give those a coat of paint as well. So that's a couple of coats of paint on those pieces as well. And I've done a second coat on the stairs, and it's now a bit later than I thought, so I'm going to leave these to dry overnight now, and I'll go and edit what I filmed so far today, and then we'll make a start again in the morning. So it's the next day now, it's actually the next afternoon, because I've been packing Etsy parcels all morning, and all of my pieces are dry, and I've given them all a gentle sand, and then I've just sorted them out into first floor and ground floor pieces, and this is just for the internal door surround. And then over here I've got the other pieces, and I've again just given them a gentle sand. I'd missed a whole side on that piece, so I've just touched that up with the paint. I've sanded the surfaces, and then I just wanted to say, if you've got any paint along the mitre joins, rather than sanding it, just cut it away with your craft knife, because sanding can actually alter the shape of the join, and then when you come to fit them you might find that you've got some gapping. So I've got a sort of blob of paint there, so just go along with the edge of your knife, and that way you don't even touch the actual mitre cut. So I've done all of those, and I'll sort those once we've fitted the internal surrounds, which I want to do now. I've got a bit of glue there. So although I wrote on these sort of G for ground and 1 for first floor, I didn't write left, right, top or bottom. So the first thing to do is actually try them in place, just in case you had any little differences. And that way, before you apply the glue, you're just making sure that you're putting it in the right place. Let me check those, and I know a couple of them were quite tight. Yeah, that's right. So there. So apply glue to the back of your strip. And if you're, you know, actually putting in a door into a gap like this, I'll be doing that in my Doll's House diary. Obviously we're not having doors in here, but I removed all of the doors in my Doll's House, so I'll be replacing those. And it's a similar system to this, and you would actually fit the door using a pin hinge into this section before you then fit the whole thing into the opening. So we will be doing that if that's something you'd like to do, put a door in. That'll probably be in a few episodes time over on YouTube. So press that into place, and I don't want to use tape or anything, so I really am just going to press each piece into place until the glue begins to take. And my battery's actually flashing again, and I found with this new camera, although I think the quality is a lot better because of the quality and the images are a much sort of higher definition, the battery doesn't last anywhere near as long. I used to be able to get, you know, sometimes a whole day's filming done on one battery in my old camera. But on this one, I'll probably get in maybe 1 or 2 hours. So if I keep saying my battery's going, that's why, because they're not lasting as long. But I have got spares. I've got 3 batteries, so I can just keep swapping them around. So I'll go and change the battery now, and then I'll come back and do this other piece. And then when we put the top and bottom pieces in, that will hold them into place as well to a certain degree, because it's nice and tight in there. Okay, I'll see you in a minute. So that's the right hand side piece in as well. And then this is my bottom piece, just measured that out. And the top piece I had to do a little bit of sanding on. It's still really tight, but I actually want it to be. I'd rather it be really tight so that it's going to hold the side pieces into place. So that slots in down there. It's propped up on something in there, I think. There. Quite a good press. One at the top. Nice and tight. I like to hear that sort of click because it clicks into place. Like that. Make sure you've got the flush edges, you're not sort of too far forward or too back. Otherwise you'll have problems when you come to actually fit the surrounds. Make sure it's right flat up against the top of the opening as well. So that's that. I'll now move upstairs and do the same thing up there, and then we'll get the surrounds attached. Okay, so I'm going to start with the ground floor shop doorway. So I've got my pieces here, and I'm going to start with the side. So I'd say it doesn't really matter which way you do these, whether you do side, side and then top, or side, top, side, if you see what I mean, but start with the side rather than the top, and that way you'll sort of get them lined up better. So apply glue again to the back of that first door surround, and then you want to make sure you're pressing it right down to your flooring, and so that you've got a lovely flush edge on the inside of the door opening there. And again, press it into place. I'm going to give it a good firm sort of press and hold. But I suppose you could use clamps for this bit. In fact, what we'll do is we'll get it fitted, and then we'll see if we can fit a few clamps in, just to sort of eliminate any gapping around the door opening. Now I'm going to do side, side, top on the other side. Shouldn't really be working on my shop floor there. Again, push it right down to the ground, and then use your fingers to make sure you've got that nice flush inside edge. don't think I'll be able to fit my big old head in there to have a look, so I'm just feeling with my fingers. And as I was holding that internal surround into place, I was just sort of glancing around the shop and just remembered that I won't need to do a skirting board across this wall on the ground floor and the first floor, because if you remember my original plans, I'm going to be making a little fire surround to go there on both floors, so I'm glad I remembered that. That would have been annoying, having to remove a piece of skirting so early on. And then once we've fitted it, because obviously it won't stretch the whole way of the wall, we can then just cut a little bit of skirting at either side. So we'll mitre angle that long piece that will go along there, and then we can just join them in. So that might be one of our first sort of pieces, that fire surround, or those fire surrounds. And then the top piece. And when you're doing the top piece, put the glue onto the little mitre angles as well. Sorry if my hand's in the way, but I just want to get it in without getting any glue on the paint above. Get that in like that, and then really sort of press it down and press it against those side pieces. And they won't be dry yet, remember, so try not to press them out of place, or push them out of place rather. Yeah, fairly pleased with the mitre joins there. Very pleased actually. Sometimes however careful you've been, you will still get a little bit of gap in, and if you do, don't worry. Mitre joins are really difficult to get, exactly right. So if you've got any little hairline cracks at all that you don't like the look of, you can just use your wood filler, work it in there, and then just once it's dried, dot a little bit of paint over it. So I think I will just try a couple of clamps, because yes, it's already trying to pull away up there. So let's see what we've got here. I'll come round there like that and put one on there. And then let's see if we can get one up into that other corner. Be really careful when you're using these sort of tight ones, because they can ping off if you've not sort of put them in exactly the right place. There's a little bit of glue just coming out at the top, so let me just get rid of that. And then I think I'll try and get a couple of clamps at the sides as well, even though I can't really see any gap in, but let's see if we can get one in there. Not a lot of space to work in really, like that. And then I'll put one on this side. Oops, that's only got one tip on it. Good job I noticed that. I'll start digging into the wood. I'll put one there as well. And any gap in on that inside edge we can't sort of see from the front anyway. Okay, pretty pleased with that. So it's gone one now, and I can hear Matt in the kitchen making a sandwich, so I'll go and have my lunch and then come back and do the other side and then the upper floor. But already that looks really nice, just sort of finishes it off. So that's the other side of the ground floor door done as well. And I've done both sides of the first floor door, and with those I just worked quite quickly and then put the clamps on to both sort of wet pieces. So they're now drying, and I want to make a start on the skirting. So I've got my skirting board here, and you want to start by making a mitre cut at one end of your piece of skirting. So go sort of as close to the end as you can. And I'm going into the ground floor back left hand corner, so I want my mitre to go towards the left. I'll just do a little cut there. I don't think I'm in a very good position for the camera, but I'll make the cut and then we'll go back into the shop. And this time I've got the skirting board standing up in the mitre block. I must put a bit of wax on my blade, it's starting to stick a little bit. I'll do that in a moment. Okay, so there's my mitre join. And then if we go back over to the shop, so that piece will go in there like that and be pushed right back into the corner. And then you can make your little pencil mark at this end. So I'm going just on the inside edge there of the actual wall. And then you can use your mitre cutters to cut that if you have some. And I'm using my old ones. Make the cut like that. And there's our first piece. And then the back piece will need a mitre at both ends. So I'll start by doing one end again. And this time I want to go the other way, don't I? Because I'm going into the other corner. Again, doing this at a bit of a funny angle now. Like that. And then I'm actually going to measure this from the front of the shop, because obviously I can't get it inside. So that angle will be pushed right into the back corner. So I'll hold that there and then make my pencil mark at this other end. Get that piece out of the way. And again, I know I haven't got the camera in the right place there, but I'll show you what I'm doing. Because it's not got wallpaper on. So I'm making the little pencil mark. Let me bring you over. So I've got that end pushed right up against that wall. And that's where it will go, in that back corner. And then this end, I've made a little pencil mark just on the inside edge of this wall. And now I'll cut the mitre going the other way. And again, I want to keep that pencil line because that's my length. I'm going just in front of that. And then that will sit in there. And it's a little bit tight, but it has fitted in when I go down like that. And then we, obviously, like I said earlier, we won't do that wall yet because we'll be putting the little fireplace there. But then that piece will join in with that mitre there. I don't know if it's a little bit dark in there, but can you see that lovely join then in the corner? So I'm going to do the same now for the first floor, and that's the only two pieces we need at the moment. And I'll do the entrance hall and landing once we've actually got the stairs in place. And I won't be doing that until I've built the banister rails and a safety rail to go across at the top there. So I'll put a bit of wax on my blade and do these top two, and then we can make a start on the coving. So my absolute top tip when you're cutting coving is, if you imagine that you've got a top piece here to your mitre cutter, imagine that that is the ceiling of your doll's house or the room that you're applying the coving to, and cut your coving as though it were placed against the ceiling. When I first tried to do coving, I found it really difficult. I couldn't get my head around the angles. It's easier when with skirting because it's a straight piece of wood, but when you're working not only with a curved piece of wood but you're cutting angles into it, it makes it really difficult to sort of get your head around how it needs to be cut. And when you cut the angle, it looks strange as well. It looks as though that's never going to fit together. So hopefully this tip will help. So just always imagine that this bit along here is your ceiling and cut the coving as if it was stuck against the ceiling. So I'm going to make the first cut then for that left hand wall of the shop. So I want my angle go in that way into the corner of the room. So I'm going to start by cutting that angle, get rid of the little product code label, DIY 006 if you ever wanted this sort of coving, and place it so that it's flat against obviously the side of your block, and then you'll have that flat top piece there to cut into. And I've waxed the blade, so that's cutting a lot easier now, a lot smoother. Now if you've got a piece of coving where you've got a different detail at one side, then always remember as well that needs to be on the bottom against the wall, so always have that down in your cutter. But luckily with this one it's symmetrical. So let's go over to the shop again. Okay, so the angle I just cut will sit right up there in that corner, and then as with the skirting you can just bring in your pencil and make a little pencil mark just on the inside. In fact, my wall is longer than the ceiling, so what shall I do? I'll do it as long as the wall, because otherwise it's going to look short there and that won't look right. So even though I'll have a little bit overhang in there, I never actually thought about that either when I pushed the floor into place up there. But the skirting board comes out that far, so it won't look too odd. So just do a little pencil mark on one area of the coving, and then you'll need to actually cut that in your mitre block. You won't be able to use your guillotine for that, as you'll end up splitting it. Yeah, so that piece will be placed there like that, so it comes to the edge of the wall, but I've got a little bit overhanging from the top there, just because the floor is set back further than it should be. But I think that's all right. It's not an angle that sort of people are going to be looking from, and that will look fine from the front. So then I'll cut the first angle in the back piece, and again take the measurement as I did for the skirting board. So I've got my angle in that end, which then joins nicely on with the first piece. I'll show you from that way as well. Got a nice join there. And then when I'm measuring this piece, I'll place the flat end of the mitre against the wall, and then come along here. Oops, this is where you need an extra hand. And then come along here, and I want to make my pencil mark on top along the edge of the wall, and that's where the end of the cut will be. So I'll do the pencil mark and then we'll go back to the cutter so you can see a bit better what I mean. Okay, so this is the ceiling, that'll be against the ceiling, and then that's where the wall comes to. So I want the mitre to end there, so the mitre will go like that. And it really helps, as I said earlier, to draw those lines on so that you know that you're putting it in the right place in your cutter. And when you've got a bit going straight across a wall, it will always be opposite angles at each end. So then I'll put that in the cutter, and I want my blade tip to end on that little pencil mark I've made. So get it lined up. I don't think you can see the pencil mark now, but it's right there in that groove. I put my blade in, that's actually a little bit behind, so I'll move it in a bit. I'm holding the piece of coving really firmly in there, and then make the cut like that. So that straight line is the width of the room, and then your angle goes in shorter, and then your next piece will join onto that, filling out that space. I hope I'm explaining that okay. I even find explaining mitre joins quite difficult. So let's try that piece into place. Okay, that's a nice fit there as well. And then for this final piece, because we are only having a fire surround lower down, I'm not doing a chimney breast or anything, so I can do the strip along here. Again, I'll cut that angle and then measure the straight line at this end as I did on the other side, and then do the same for the first floor. Okay, so that's all the pieces now cut, and again I've gone through and written G or 1 on the backs of them for ground floor and first floor so that I don't get them mixed up. And I'm now going to fix them to a painting sheet and apply a coat of paint. So I've given each of those pieces 2 coats of paint, and once they're completely dry I can give them a quick sand and then we can actually get them fitted. So all of my pieces are now completely dry and I've given each of them a gentle sand, and I'm now going to glue them into place. So I've sorted them into rooms. Let me just move the coving, and I'll start with the skirting board and just apply glue to the back of the piece. Being careful not to get any onto the actual floor of the shop. And I'm just pushing that piece down slightly to hold down the floorboards at the back there, which will just lift in a little bit. Press it down like that. And again, there's no need to secure these pieces with masking tape or anything like that, so I'm just going to hold it into place for a moment while the glue begins to take. And I really love adding the skirting and coving. It just sort of finishes off all those raw edges. It makes the piece look, you know, more solid, more complete. So it's a nice little finishing touch to a room. And then when you're doing the second piece, remember just to put a little bit of glue onto the mitre cut as well. Push it right back into the mitre join. Push down with that piece as well. What I am actually going to do while I'm on this edge is just put a little clamp. I'm just turning it around a little bit. I'm just going to put a clamp on that edge there where that is trying to lift off. Like that. And again, a little bit of excess glue there. And then we can move on to the coving. That's the back piece and the side piece in, and there's a little bit of gap in there. I don't know if you can pick that up on camera. Just a little sort of hairline gap along there and a little bit of gap in the mitre. So what I'll do is, once all this is dried into place, is use some of my fine wood filler and we'll fill those little gaps in. And sometimes it can be, it's either that the ceiling isn't completely straight or that the coving isn't completely straight or a little bit warped or something like that, but I've pushed it up as much as I can. But it's not a problem, we can get in there with that filler and fill those little gaps. So just the final piece down here to do now. So that's that final piece of coving in place, and now I shall move on to the first floor. And the first floor is now complete as well. And again, I've got a bit of gap in, especially along that back piece up there, and the mitres aren't as neat in this first floor as they are down below. But all of that can be resolved with some of that nice fine wood filler. And that will be my next job, just going round looking into every little corner, applying filler where it needs it. There are some places where I need to just sort of touch up the paint, such as at the end of the coving and things like that, and along the front here. I've got a little bit of flooring to trim off, and just a lot of little sort of finishing jobs to do before we can move on to the next stage. But I'm really pleased with how it's looking now. Really like the colour scheme as well. And I think we need to see that with the lights on. So we're getting really close now to where we can actually start making the furniture and accessories. But in the next episode I'll be fitting the stairs and making the banister rails, And I also want to get this front plinth painted. I haven't forgotten about those signs that I want to do on the side of the shop, on both sides, so we'll have a look at those as well. Okay, so that's about it for today. I really hope you've enjoyed this double episode. I'm really pleased with how the shop is coming along, and I hope you are too. Now I'm going to crack on with those next lot of jobs straight away so that I'll have loads to share with you in our next episode, episode 11. So for now, take care and I'll see you soon. Bye!